Welcome to another episode of Bridges in Tech, a podcast dedicated to sharing the stories of women of color in tech. Learn about the projects they're working on, lessons learned, their experiences, and how we can collectively increase representation of women of color in the tech field. I also sometimes chat with leaders, recruiters, and allies to discover how we can all work together to reach the same goal, increase representation of women of color in the tech field. Today, things are a little bit different. I am sitting down with two men to discuss the civil unrest that has been going on, conversation around race, discrimination, prejudice, and the way forward. So I hope that you come with an open mind and you're ready to learn something. That all being said, I'm going to let each of you introduce yourself before we actually get started. Who wants to go first?
Since we're doing a lot of change, the elder can go last, and we'll do the up-and-coming gentleman. Dereck, I defer to you.
Oh, well, I thank you for your classiness. No, so I'm Dereck Burchette. I've never really been good at giving elevator speeches on myself. I guess I met you both through working in IS security. That is what my bachelor's degree is in, network management and security. And I currently work as a business systems analyst.
All right.
I've been a person of color my entire life. I figured I'd toss it in there as well.
You are experienced in this person of color thing.
I know. I
haven't missed a day. So
I actually wish, we could do your video because I have a favorite Dereck story in a minute, but I'll do my introduction first. So my name is Aaron Bregg. My day job is I'm a lead information security analyst. My night job, my kind of hobby is I'm the director of professional outreach for the Cloud Security Alliance, and I do help with ISSA sometimes. So Apple should be happy that I'm touting the ISSA. So a funny story about Dereck. So Dereck came to this information security program as an intern two summers ago, right? Yep. And I had a chance to directly work with them because halfway through the year, a priority project came in for the firewall update project, and trying to move to default deny. And I had the opportunity to have both interns work for me. Dereck and Nate Severfeld. I always get it wrong. Is it Severfeld? Okay. Well, Nate, if you're listening, sorry for butchering your last name.
We butchered your name.
And I get a chance to work with Dereck for most of the summer, and his energy level kind of just blew me away. And so that at the end of the summer, when we were doing interns, I don't even know if Dereck knows this. This might be new. A couple of us were slated by management or tagged by management to do like reviews, and I did reviews on both of them. And with Dereck, I was brutally honest because I thought he was very talented. I see a little bit of me in him, like incredibly talented, energy, jumps right into it. But like me, you kind of got to keep him on task a little bit because he tends to get distracted easy like me. But yeah, I actually recommended him for the associate program. So he was fortunate enough to get into the associate program before all the COVID craziness. So
yeah, well, thank you for that. I did not know any of that. That's really nice. Thank you. Thanks for that.
See, that's a better introduction. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, like I said, welcome to the show. And this is exciting. I have never had more than one person on the show, so this is new for me. Bear with me as I try to juggle this. But it's going to be interesting because we got a straight type A white male.
You could say it. You could say it. The target demographic that needs to change. So yes.
And then we have Dereck. Dereck, what do you identify as? I have to.
So I'm half black, half Puerto Rican. So I usually identify as mixed, or I guess whichever one is most convenient at the time. So like when I'm with my mom's side of the family, I'm Puerto Rican. With my dad's side, I'm black. It just makes conversations a little easier. So.
Awesome.
So you can chameleon, you can adapt.
So a true person of color.
I like to think so.
And do you, so I'm just going to jump right into a question there. Do you typically feel like people identify, or people think you're Black? Do they just assume you're Black?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
100%. Yeah. They usually what I've run, and I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off. I just got excited. But normally what ends up happening is by default, it's just Black. And I can't blame them. You know, I mean, I guess whatever about me just looks Black, you know. Mm-hmm. But once I explain to them, or they meet my mom and they're like, well, why is your mom yelling at you in Spanish? I'm like, oh, because, you know, I'm half Puerto Rican, you know, it's just one of those things. So, but 100% people usually default to Black. And that's actually kind of a gripe of mine, not necessarily people assuming I'm Black, but because of like when I'm filling out applications or anything like that in the HR box, it's either Black and then not Hispanic. And I'm like, well,
you're like, I'm
technically
Black.
I am Black.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
But I am Hispanic, and then it's like, well, 2 or more races, and then I'm like, all right, 2 or more races, but then not Hispanic, and I'm like, so skin sometimes. But yes, no, it's 100% easy to go off of. I'm completely okay with somebody assuming I'm Black, because I am Black. It's just, but the reality of it is I still am. So you know, people just assume that off rip or by default. It doesn't offend me at all. So
yeah, but that probably is really good for this conversation, because I mean, have you experienced it? I gotta be quiet. I was just sorry, Johanna. I just was like, has the experience, like, have you experienced it from both sides, right? Like, you know, you have the whole thing around, like, you know, if you're, white mom or Black mom or vice versa, and then you get, you know, you usually get it. But I mean, is that the same with like a Hispanic community? Because me being naive, I'm going to be naive, because I would think they would be more understanding, right? Like they deal with racisms, but do you still have racism like cross race?
Between, like, from a family standpoint, like, so, you know, my Hispanic side, they have no issue with the Black side and vice versa. Okay. As a matter of fact, I'd argue that they really synergize very well, just because where I'm from, usually you see, you know, a Black man usually with a Hispanic woman more often than not, you know, so it's that much I'm used to. So there's no racism between there. But I guess I'm the perfect storm when it comes to experiencing, I guess, prejudices or discrimination based off of, you know, if I'm Black, then I get all of that goes with being Black. And then from the Hispanic side, everybody's defaults to Mexican.
Yep.
And that, you know, people just build the wall type stuff. So I've had, I don't want to say double the dosage of it, but the opportunity for me to experience it is a little bit more prevalent, because I have 2 races that aren't the most loved right now.
So
we're going to change that.
So basically, you are the illegal immigrant as well as the thug.
Yes. No, that is exactly what I am, and I summed up so quickly.
Yeah, but I guess, and unfortunately, there isn't a better. Like, neither of them is better, right? So it's not like you can say, hey, you know, I'd rather pass for an illegal immigrant than thug. And like I always say, the interesting thing about being Black is that there are no time offs and there is no PTO, and I just can't decide to not be Black today. Like, I'm Black 24/7. So unfortunately, whatever is going to happen 24/7. Now you might be around, you know, better people like Aaron sometimes, and it's fine, and you completely forget about what the rest of the world is out there, and then you get back out and you meet some weird people and you're like, oh, never mind, I totally forgot about that being Black thing.
You got my first education moment. That's not something I would have thought about. I mean, I'm going to sound really stupid for a minute, but I didn't think about it like that, right? So, you know, trying to be open-minded to everybody and really trying to get to there is no color stuff, and even you forcing me to think differently, because I gotta admit, Dereck, you don't know this, but I had her on a podcast just before she did this one. Well, I mean, started hers, and it was about diversity equality and inclusion, right? And it was a swath of topics. We talked about, women in cybersecurity, gay people in cybersecurity, Black, like it was all over the place. So the whole switching off thing, I didn't think about it, because like you, I'm assuming that I would like to think more people like me are not like me, but the fact that you said you can go, you can go get something to eat after this, and you can't turn it off. I didn't think about that, and I do need to think about that more.
Yeah, and the thing I was going to say to Dereck a little bit ago was, so it's interesting because Dereck is mixed, but if a police pulled him over, right, he's Black, right?
Yeah, 100%.
100%. And I always joke about this when even like if I have arguments with, say other Black people, even if we don't get along, it doesn't matter, because when a white racist person sees you, they don't care if you are Nigerian Black mixed with something else,
rich Black, poor Black. Yeah,
you are all the same.
Yep.
And it's rather unfortunate because, again, we know people are all individuals, and we have good people and we have bad people, and we shouldn't just judge people based on the color of their skin. But unfortunately, this entire society is around this whole really weird concept of skin color. So what has been some of your experiences, Dereck, that you are comfortable with speaking? I get it. A lot of people don't want to relive the traumas or
I've had both good and bad experiences. And when I tell you I'm so used to it, and it's bad that I'm used to it, but it's just I laugh it off now. I find myself in a situation where I am more impressed with the creativity behind the racism than the actual racism itself. And it sucks that it's gotten that way, but it's like, you can say the N-word all you want, but like if you give me something a little bit more clever, I'm like, well, I respect you a little bit more than that. If you're going to hate me, at least be creative. But with regard to some of the experiences I've had, I guess specifically in technology, or since I've started doing technology, because I didn't start doing this until I think my first day in school was January 8th, 2016. So that was like when this whole technology road started. And I couldn't tell if it was because of the area, because I'm not a Michigander, I'm not a Michigan native, or if it was, just me being in technology in its own right, where people by default assume that I was not in technology at whatsoever. So they would tell me like, oh, well, you're in the wrong classes. You shouldn't be in the sports management class, or they assume that I'm
when you're in your Philadelphia Eagles.
Exactly. You know how that is. And I to their credit, I do pass the eye test of an athlete. I do. I have relatively athletic physique. So, but the reality of it is like I'm a book nerd. I'm a regular comic book nerd, and that's what's going on. So from technology in school, it has not happened at work, which I was pleasantly surprised, because all of the experiences that I've heard from others about what goes on in corporate America, growing up, realizing that my natural hair isn't professional, or at least defined as professional. It's not necessarily entirely negative experiences, but different experiences, because people were looking at me at a different perspective. I'm new. I'm different. I'm not looking like I belong. For example, I used to work at a relatively large retail company, and I was working there for about, I want to say maybe a good 3 or 4 years. And there was a few times where I was followed around my own store. Like I didn't work there. Granted, they were relatively new employees, or they were helping out from other stores because we were short staffed, but they defaulted to assuming that I was like, all right, well, what are you doing here doing wrong? And because I understood stuff like that, it also happened to me in college. I've been, I don't want to say harassed, but I was stopped and questioned by our campus safety officers, not realizing that I'm an RA and that I'm actually doing my periodic rounds and making sure that the school, at least from a populist standpoint, is neat, posters are hung up, stuff like that. So I was worried that once I got into working, that the security would look at me and assume like, all right, well, he doesn't look like he belongs in corporate America, and I would get harassed that way. So I was nervous about that, and I was pleasantly surprised when that wasn't the case. When I could walk in and nobody would necessarily bat an eye, or I was also concerned that because I have different hairstyles. I have my hair in an afro. I'll rock the Jerry curls. I'll put it in a
but
braid.
your
Whatever it is.
football fro is awesome. I'm not gonna
Thank you.
lie.
And I like to consider it my lion's mane, if you will. But I was nervous that me doing those things, because I believe in donating what I have, right? So I've always donated, and to help my hair grow, I have it in braids. But I also know that from a stereotypical standpoint, even if you look at any form of media or anything like that, if you have your hair braided, they automatically by default assume thug. So I didn't want to make people uncomfortable, but I also wanted to do my own part. I wanted to continue to do my thing and express myself. Having my hair braided allows it to grow a little faster, and then I can donate at the end of the year, like I was initially planning on doing. Shout out to Augie for this, because I had a conversation with him, and he really put my mind at ease and really showed a lot of support for my decision. He was like, you know what, I'm all for it. Now, of course, he wanted me to do things. Don't go overboard, like don't show up with my hair on fire, right? Like that would cause some type of concern, but the fact that I was welcomed and supported throughout the entirety of the process spoke volumes. Like I was like, wow, I was completely expecting everything under the sun to go wrong. And when it didn't, I was happy that it didn't. And it didn't happen. Excuse me, let me back up. I'm not necessarily feeling it because it didn't happen, right? I'm happy that it didn't happen, and that it didn't happen because that's the culture. It didn't happen not because nobody wanted to get in trouble. They're trying to make sure that we're being politically correct or anything. Like, it was because they were accepting of me and my differences. So, but I mean, outside of that, I've experienced all the same, I guess, racial injustices or plagiarism, not plagiarism, prejudices that other people's gotten. I remember one time I gotten pulled over leaving football practice with a good buddy of mine, and I drove a 1989 Toyota Camry. I called her the Spidey Mobile. That was my baby. Had automatic seatbelts and all of that. And I got pulled over and was issued a ticket for not wearing my seatbelt. And I was like, I physically can't not wear my seatbelt, because you open the door, it goes off, you close it, it goes back. There's a lap belt that you can, do yourself, but unless the officer had x-ray vision, there's no way he would have seen that.
Right.
And
was this in Michigan?
No, this wasn't in Michigan. This was actually in New Jersey.
Okay.
So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, I couldn't fight. I could fight it, but the ticket was cheaper than the court fees to fight it. And back then I didn't have, a surplus of money. So anything I got, I was like, all right, well, I'd much rather just pay the ticket, take the L, instead of going to court, potentially losing it, and then still having to pay the ticket on top of the court fees, or best case scenario, I just pay the court fees. So I was like, you know what? I don't feel like having to take the day off to go to the municipal building. I just paid the ticket and kept it pushing, So it's things like that I've dealt with. But I've learned to not necessarily let it hurt me or let it affect me negatively. And it also doesn't deter me from having these difficult conversations or looking at people the same, because I understand that my experiences are not going to be the same as anyone else's. Mm-hmm. So I can't expect them to be immediately sensitive or understanding of where I'm coming from, and vice versa. I'm not going to or they shouldn't expect me to be immediate, like, you know what, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I know you've been through your hardships and all of that good jazz, but I'm glad that we're having these conversations now. So,
which brings me to my first hard topic. I want a giant disclaimer when I ask this, because I am asking it because I think there's everybody needs to help with this one, but it goes to what I consider programming, right? So, white people can be programmed and black people can be programmed. And when I talk about that, there's lack of information programming, because Dereck, you're not psychic, so you don't know this, but I didn't know about the Tulsa incident until I saw HBO Watchmen. And really? Joanna was like, you never heard of Black Wall Street? And I was like, I went to school in Reed City, Michigan. We're not really diverse. Black Wall Street there. I was so shocked with that opening episode, and just I'm like, wow, this writer is dark. I know that it's a sequel to some great writers, but when when I found out that it was based on a real event, I was stunned. I'm not gonna lie, I was stunned. I'm like, holy crap, this this like really happened. I mean, not the Watchmen, like maybe getting superpowers and stuff, that stuff. But I was floored, and that's where I'm saying, that's the kind of that I think is like the programming of white people by not giving all the information.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, I think that that black people can be programmed also, because if you want to go, and this is where some people are going to think I'm just a crazy white person, but like gangster rap didn't exist 30 years ago. Like some of the best music, in my opinion, some of the best music that's ever been created has actually come out of like black musicians, right? I love the blues. I mean, I even like, some might tease me about the fun rap, but I mean, and then there's real rap, right? Not the gangster rap, but we like are programmed as white people to where, I listened to 50 Cent back in the day. I mean, I don't anymore now, but not that, not that it's wrong with any 50 cents, but I think it's that programming thing, right? So now I'm seeing somebody, I'm a white person seeing someone down the street. They got their pants, baggy pants hanging down, for all and just popping around. That kind of shouldn't matter, right? Like the stuff that Joanne kind of really educated me about is like, you gotta wipe out stuff like what did you call it? The unconscious bias. Unconscious bias. Thank you. It's like, you got to wipe that out. But at the same time, how do you guys fight the system, so to speak, and make it not so that, okay, it really doesn't matter what kind of rap you listen to, but like the N-word, maybe the N-word shouldn't be used at all, right? Like if it's meant as a derogatory thing, should that just, and I know that's going to sound weird and maybe controversial, but like, should we all not say the N-word, right? If it's that offensive, should we just not all say it?
I prefer not to be called the N-word at all by anyone, whether they're a white, green, red, black. But I also prefer not to be called the B word. Can I say that?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I guess that's my show. I can say whatever I want, right?
You can say whatever you want. Yeah.
So like your girlfriends, if you hang out with a lot of girls, right, they would talk about it and they'd be like, oh, bitch, whatever. Like, I don't like to be called that word. I don't care if you're my friend or not my friend, but those are my personal rules. Now, I do know there are some black people that do like to refer to themselves that way, N-word. And I think it's different interpretation, right? But again, I'll see if Dereck, maybe Dereck has a different opinion on this. But I say if they're comfortable with calling each other, that's fine. They have that understanding. But the original term of that, where white people were using it as not a good word, you should never repeat it. I don't care where you are, right? And if friends want to call each other that, that's up to them. What's your opinion on that?
So from where I come from, growing up, I've been called the N-word so much I don't even notice it. I don't even notice when people say it anymore. It's become so ingrained in just the natural dialogue to the point where people use it for gender neutral. They just, it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, you get called the N-word, and usually from how, because I personally, I don't care, or I shouldn't say I don't care. If it's not coming from malicious intent, or if, that's the accepted approach amongst your friends group or whatever, I'm all for it. Whatever you want to call each other, as long as nobody's getting hurt and nobody's getting offended, I'm all for it. Do what you want to do. Right. With regards to referring to women of the B word, I personally don't like to do that. I think it's disrespectful, and, I don't think it's good. Because I think it just continues to beat down and perpetuate what we have going on today. Now, I do understand that the B word is a negative word, and if we're being honest, the reality is we all get mad, right? We all get mad, and we want to say the meanest, baddest word we can think of. But and that's what people do. That's just I think to each their own. Now, but I would assume or expect that if someone were to come at me in some regard and they were using that and it was clearly intentional to be disrespectful, then of course it's going to be a completely different reaction than if it's not. It's each their own is how I look at it.
I would say if anyone comes and calls me that word, we're going all out. I don't care. We're just going to step outside and fight it out.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
But
no, because I mean, people, I know white people try and be cool and use it. I know that white people try and, say it as a bad word. So it's more like, I think, I think that all white people should not use it. I don't care, if you're, another derogatory term, wigger, right? The white guy that's trying to be like, if we truly need to take that extra step, we need, in my opinion, we need to wipe out all the labels. It really is. Like, if anything's being used in a derogatory way, we just need to wipe it out, because I still think it comes back to that programming. And I hate to use the term woke because it's overused, but I mean, I really did. I mean, she floored me with that whole resume stuff. And the backstory for that, Dereck, was she's like, she knows I used to be a general manager back in the day, and we talked about like if I got a resume and the resume was Shaniqua Smith, like, she's like, well, what did you think about that? I'm like, well, I would have been thinking about the position I was hiring for. And if it was, like a server or, a bar, maybe more bartender, because, I like attitude, I like the sass, I would have thought of that. And she's like, but maybe she would have been a great hostess. I literally took her out of the running, not so much because she was black, but because she was black. Does that make sense?
Well, not because she was black, but because she was black.
Right. No.
I mean, I'm not like straight up, oh my God, she's black, I don't want her in my restaurant. But it was,
right.
I don't know, there's no easy way to say it. Because she was black,
that's what
because
it is.
she was black.
It's basically like a person with that name. Oh, it must have some type of attitude. Maybe it's like really hyped and all this. She could probably be like the most like laid back person. But
docile, quiet.
Yep, you've already set the expectations for her, and you were not thinking black, but deep down inside you, the people that have that name. It's like it's unconscious. You didn't think of it. So we all have the tendencies I think that it's becoming self-aware to kind of step on your own toes when you feel, catch yourself making those mistakes or about to say something. You're like, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't say that. But when I went to CNA school, certified nursing assistant. It was a 3 weeks program. And then I had to do, this was probably before I was 18. And then I had to do clinicals at a nursing home here in Michigan. I'm not going to name the nursing home. And I went there, and the first day they assigned me to an old lady. She was probably born in like the 20s or whatever. And I walked in there, and she's like, what is she doing in my room? She's like, they're not allowed to walk in the same entrance or go to the same bathroom, and she has the guts to go. And I was just like, what is she talking about? Granted, she had, dementia and whatnot, and she was stuck in her 1920 years. But it was the first time that somebody had literally looked me in the eye and told me that I am not allowed to even walk in the same door, go to the same bathroom, let alone come take care of her. But there wasn't anyone there because I was the only person assigned to her. And I think I was waiting for the other nurse to come back. And when the nurse came, she was like, no, people are allowed to be together now and this and that. And she was like, no, I don't want her in my room. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to step outside and deal with this.
So Dereck, where do you think, because this is a good question. When I talk about, when I say programming people, I'm sure conspiracy theorists will probably start emailing me. I don't mean like that. I think that majority of it is not intentional, but I do think there is some intentional. Yeah. So Dereck, what do you think? What do all of us need to do to stop that thinking? Right? What's the first thing that you would do? I wave my magic wand and you're president, you're emperor of the universe. That's the one I always like to say is I'm going to grow up and be emperor of the universe. I made you emperor of the universe. What's the first thing we can do to change that? Right? Because we have to change it.
Well, I think on a smaller scale, it comes down to each individual person being more aware of what they're doing, because a lot of times people won't realize that just because they aren't themselves racist or anything like that, they could still be perpetuating a lot of these negative stereotypes, or they could be treating people differently and not realizing it, or making people feel bad and not realizing it, based off of how they're saying. An example of that is like growing up. You know, it was always, and I was guilty of this, and it took me a while to realize that this was wrong. But growing up, it would always be if something was bad, you just called it gay. Like, oh, that's gay, that's bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, in my mind, I'm thinking I have no problem with anybody who of any sexuality. You know, anyone who is a part of the LGBTQIA plus community. You know, I'm cool with them regardless. You know, but my speech was off-putting to them. It was perpetuating the negative stereotype around it. And once I realized that I was doing what I was doing wrong, you know, I had to unlearn some of that behavior and change and realize that, you know, yes, I have not discriminated against anybody who's homosexual. Yes, I haven't, you know, gone out and done any wrong to them intentionally. But from what I was saying, it was making matters worse, in my opinion, or at least it wasn't helping it. But and on a grander scale, I think it's going to come down to media, all forms of it, whether it's TV, whether it's
Absolutely.
movies, you name it, because there's a lot of tropes that you'll see perpetuated all throughout media, right? Take
Mm-hmm.
black women, for instance. Black women were always the big mamas, and then they became the Jezebels, and now the strong black woman trope is the new thing. But I feel like that could also be a bit negative in how it portrays black women, because black women are more than just those three things. You know what I'm saying? They
Mm-hmm.
truly are. And black and Hispanic men, you know, typically you'll see that if it's a bad guy or a thug, you know, there'll be somebody who's either black, or if they're a part of any type of cartel or anything related to drugs, it's going to be a minority as well. And
Mm-hmm.
even with uh, drug addicts or something like that, it's always something negative. And as my dad likes to call it, he says he's tired of seeing another white superhero, right? And that's kind of how it's always been. It's always been, you know, people of color have always been the bad guys
The
per
bad
se.
guys, yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm not
and
gonna say
and
the
you know,
Watchmen, like that
no,
was,
Watchmen is
oh
good.
my
Watchmen
God,
is
just
they
all the
do good
parts
stuff.
about that. I'm like, still my mind is melted by that. I
Yeah,
Black
mean,
Panthers
and
was
it's what it
good.
is.
And I
Yes.
love Black Panthers because even the woman that was doing the technology was a black girl. That never
Mm.
happens.
Yes, yes, that's exactly why I loved the movie Black Panther, even just the comic books behind it, you know, and I think that's why I'm such a big fan of Stan Lee, because Stan Lee realized that these group of people were being discriminated against, right? And he wanted to address it. But he also knew that if you're trying to get, I guess, a wider spread medium out there, you got to kind of play the game almost to an extent, you
yep,
know. So, but
yep.
you know, people will love the X-Men, but not realize that the X-Men is basically what talks about what's going on with
Yep.
systematic racism against Black people, or any minority, a person of
Yep.
color. You know, so I think on a grander scale, once we start to change things from how we present them to the world, you know, in any form of media, I think that will start to have a larger impact. You know, instead of having Barbie and Ken dolls, you know, why not have some other races of dolls? You know, because that's
Yeah,
that's
why dolls
growing up,
always
that's all
black?
you would see. You know what I'm saying? It's like my favorite superhero is Spider-Man. I think everybody who has never known me knows that I am Spider-Man,
Mm-hmm.
or I don't want to say I'm Spider-Man because that would give away my secret identity. But you know, I like Spider-Man a whole lot. You know, that's what it is. But once they started to popularize Miles Morales, right,
Miles.
being the
Yep.
ultimate Spider-Man, everybody by default assumed that he was going to immediately be my favorite Spider-Man because of all the similarities. You know, first off, he's Spider-Man. Second off, he's black and Puerto Rican. You know what I'm saying? He's from the
Mm-hmm.
Northeast because I'm, you know, where I'm from. He's from New York, but I'm from Pennsylvania, so you know it's not too far off. But I was like, I didn't really like Miles because it felt as though they were forcing Black Spider-Man, right? They didn't give him
Mm-hmm.
any original characters. He basically just picked up the mantle after Peter Parker. So from that perspective, I'm like, we're taking steps in the right direction, but I don't think changing other characters and just giving them, you know, like a black variant of it or a minority variant of it in general is the answer. I think it's a good step in a positive direction, get people more open and comfortable with it, but I don't think that's the end all be all for it.
Hmm. I
I didn't.
love
I didn't
that.
think about it like that. That's. I was like, into the Spider Verse is like really popular in our household because we're
It's a
kind
great
of
movie,
nerdy people.
a phenomenal
I
movie.
didn't think about that. So I mean, I don't know. That's like, do we figure out how to you know ex- like promote more black writers? I don't know. It's a trade off, right? Because
Hmm.
in my perfect world, like no labels about anything. Like in my perfect world, it like Dereck coming in to security. It really shouldn't matter what your color, what your age, because I gotta admit, in the next few years, I'm gonna have to worry about age discrimination, right? Like I'm in my prime now, but that's the backside of that. Like I do want to get to a part where it really doesn't matter anything. So when I got that application for Shaniqua, I didn't even think twice. She worked here in. Like, it's like, even like in my perfect world, you need affirmative action or anything, right? Like it really is like you come in the door, this is who you are, you get the job no matter what. But to get to that point, Joanna's right. The unconscious bias needs to go away. And you're probably right, Eric. It's got to start with the media, and they have so much power now. I mean, think about
and we're never going to get to that perfect world. There isn't going to be a perfect world like that, because you're coming from years and years and years of indoctrination of people being judged by this thing. And I don't want you to not see that I'm not Black. Like, I don't want you to see no color. I want you to see that I am Black, because I come with a different set of experiences than anybody else that isn't Black. And that is probably something that is going to work out for you in some cases. When you look at companies that have lost businesses because they had an all-white team making decisions and putting crap out for advertisement, and then Black Twitter has to take them down, and then lose a whole bunch of money. See, that is something you could have taken advantage of if you saw color, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we should ever get to a place where we're not seeing color, because those are the things that make people unique. And even though we get to the perfect world, we still have history of all the different things that our ancestors had they have passed on to their families. And so we have to get to that fine balance where it's like, I see you, I see that you're Black, but I'm still going to give you the exact same opportunities that I would give a white person. See, the whole thing about giving Black people opportunities isn't about, just giving them opportunities for opportunity's sake. We're saying you have a white person, a Black person, same qualifications, same experience level, blah, blah, blah. Do they get the exact same chance? Or does the other one, because it's Black, is already off the table? So I follow a lot of stories of Black women, and I would read it. I always start with the headline, and it's like, oh, this woman is so great in the talk, and then I do a little bit digging. And then I find out this Black woman, not only does she have 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degrees and a PhD before she got here, but this story would sound like she just came out of nowhere, right?
Out of nowhere.
Right out of the bottom. But we're talking about her in the same capacity as the white male that dropped out of GRCC. Not even like Harvard, because Harvard dropouts are a different beast. They're not.
Yeah, they are.
You had to at least get to Harvard, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's always that comparison of a successful Black woman, and you look through her history and you see what she has done, and you're like, wait, that's it? Like, that's all you got out of that? And it's not comparable. And that's where we need to get to. The same, awarding me the exact same opportunities for other people, while still recognizing that I am in fact Black, right? You're starting with a deck of ladder. That just
yeah, her Burry Vivon is kicked in.
Yep.
You started with a ladder, and as a Black person, I didn't start with that because I had to overcome like 500 different things to even get there, right? It's admitting that as a white person, you have that privilege, and as a Black person, I didn't have those privileges. Does that make any sense? I feel like I'm rambling.
Yeah. No. No, go ahead, Dereck. Sorry.
No, I was saying that it made sense to me. I guess the only thing that I would add, or I guess a few things I would add, would be, we don't want to, because this can be dangerous, right? This time, I feel like people are like, well, now they're become very sensitive to diversifying. And I don't want this to be everybody's doing it, not necessarily just to check off a box for diversity, or they're discriminating against white people now, because I believe, and I guess it aligns similarly with what you believe, Aaron, is that I want the best person for the job, be it black, white, guy, girl.
Yep.
You know, if this person's the best for the job, and I want this thing done, I don't care who it is, I just want it done. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I think it really should be. But I don't want people to become too hypersensitive to it, because it'll be a double-edged sword where now it's like, well, all we've done is just flip the roles. You know, it's 160 years from now. Now white people are discriminated against. You know, and now there's that, just because it wasn't how it always was. You know, it's just, we don't want the coin, or we don't want the balance to really tip in one favor or another. We want it to be as level as possible. You know, and I think
that's where I was going with no color, no labels.
Absolutely. No, and that's what it really should be, because people at the end of the day are proud of their color. You know, that's why people have so much pride in their flags. You know, and I think it's not bad that you don't want to see color, or that you want to convey, like, listen, I'm not going to use your color against you, right?
Right.
But we need to talk to everyone and let them know that I'm not going to discriminate against you because of it. Because that's ultimately, at the end of the day, when I'm trying, like when I talk to some of my white friends or my non-black friends, I try and tell them, like, white privilege doesn't mean your life isn't hard. It doesn't mean that at all. Your life can be very difficult. You can go through some weird trials and tribulations.
My wife Heather was just talking about that. She's like, you know, when you know, people say white privilege, she's like, you know, I end up becoming a single mom. She's like, I had to short sell my house. She's like, I fought tooth and nail for what I have. I mean, she was the first person to admit. She's like, okay, maybe at this point that was a thing, but she, you know, she gets offended, like, white privilege overall, because you know, they just see her like, oh, look, you know, a 30-something woman driving a big black SUV. She's all got that handed to her, and they don't know anything about her. They don't know that she was a single mom. They don't know that she was, like, worried about putting, you know, food on her daughter's plate and everything else, and then started as a receptionist, and now she's an Epic systems analyst. So she's like, I don't want, but that's almost to your point, right? It's like, we can't go the other way, and just because we see her, she's not a white soccer mom. So
white privilege affords you to be given certain opportunities, and like Dereck said, it doesn't mean that you didn't struggle. It means you were afforded opportunities that were solely because you were white, whether you knew it or not. You don't always know it. That you did.
That's fair.
And it's up to you to take that opportunity and do something with it, right? So for example, me as a white girl walking into a company and asking for a receptionist job, the person automatically thinks, oh, you know, nice girl, whatever, innocent enough, could be a good receptionist, whatever, I'm going to give you that opportunity. And I come in and I'm a black girl, and they're like, oh, well, what did she do to not have a job? And maybe she's lazy and this and that. And I'm not even awarded the opportunity to be a receptionist. So I can't even climb up to get to the next level. I am just stuck because no one would give me that opportunity. Right.
Yeah, because it's just, there's no negative impact. Due to your skin color. It doesn't play any negative factor into your life. You know, and
that makes sense.
That's really what it comes down to.
At dinner time later, I'll have to explain it, because I see what you're saying. Her skin color didn't have a negative impact. So that already puts a little bit ahead, which is like that one video that was going on LinkedIn for a while, where it showed everybody like at it looked like it was a Christian camp, but regardless, the message was the same when he had everybody lined up. Have you seen that, where he's like, this is $100 bill, the first person to get to me gets it?
Yep.
But, you know, take a step forward to this and take a step forward to that. I mean, and yes, there were still some
opportunity.
Yeah, there's still some black kids that stepped forward, but when you got towards the end, it was the overwhelmingly more like white kids. And, you know, when he said, you know, if like straight on even race, he's going to smoke, you know, like he's going to smoke you, but you don't even realize that you had that privilege. That's why that was such a powerful video.
Like when I would apply for jobs, and this was something I also had to learn on my own. And when I would apply for job and I would pick that in that voluntary field of my race and my gender, I swear I never got one call back ever from any company. And then I started trying different things, and I would take it off. I'll keep the female on, and I would take off the race. And I almost always got a call back. The exact same resume, nothing different from it. That is an opportunity that I already missed just because I was Black.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a different way of looking at it. Nope.
Yeah. And we all still struggle, and what you choose to do with the opportunities you get is up to you. But some of us don't get the opportunity at all, so there's not much we can do with it.
So, which is a good segue to like talking about like meaningful change. So, Dereck, I don't know if you know this, but I was fortunate enough to be one of the people selected to do like a little tiny blip vert for the Spectrum Health Diversity stuff.
Oh, I saw that.
And
congratulations.
And I talked for 50 seconds. They narrowed it down to like 15 because I'm just me.
Yeah,
and I talk
was like,
too
this
much.
is not the whole thing.
But my biggest thing is I'm like, I do agree with the whole making your social media picture Black, and even your CEO of blah 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 saying we're going to be doing this, and even to this extent, like a step further is the people doing money. Like our leaders are going to donate money and come up with a game plan. That's another step, but I feel like all that is not going to be enough to affect change. I mean, I know the system, like we're going to need people to vote, and we're going to need people to vote with their wallet also. And this is where, how can I help people understand that, you can take a day off and you can go protest, and that's great. But the hard part, if you really want to affect change, it's going to be, you're going to need to vote, and you're not going to just not at the presidential level, but you need to pay attention to your state politics. You need to pay attention to your local politics.
Yes,
and does it suck having to do with it?
Yeah.
You have like, how do we get more people out there to vote? Because I don't think, I mean, I agree with you guys that this feels like a shift, right? It feels like Joanne and I talked a little bit. It feels to me like, I'm going to date myself, like 1990, right? Like that was an awesome year because the wall fell. I mean, I felt that I didn't have to worry about the Cold War. Like the music was different. It just felt different. This one feels different, but it feels like I'm like scared and nervous. Does that make sense? Like, or happy, but scared. I'm happy because I'm like, man, I think they're getting to enough, white people for them to understand it. But I'm also scared because like Americans have the worst attention span in the world. Like,
yeah,
seriously.
Yeah, we do.
So in 2 months, like it's the end of summer, or when all the extra money runs out from the stimulus, and they're going to have to worry about bills, like how much of this momentum is going to be gone. And that's where we can't have that momentum go. We need people to vote. And it's, what can we do? How can I help educate, the the Black community? It's just a lot easier to say it, that it's going to be hard work. And when I say hard work, it's like the fun, not the fun stuff. Not you got to vote. You got to vote with your wallet. Like we need change.
I don't think you need to educate the African American community. I think you need to educate your fellow white people to support and vote with your thumbprint or whatever you vote with, and your wallet to a person that is not a racist, that doesn't have racist values that we can see and tell and know every single day that they're obviously racist, and we're still like, oh well, but whatever. They need to do that, because if you look at some of the votes, and I can say this, so as a Black woman, Black women have delivered this election time and time and time again. So we don't need any more education. We got this. It's getting you. So I think it starts in obviously this conversation, which I applaud you for taking the initiative and wanting to have this conversation. It is difficult conversations and not everyone wants to have it, but it's then taking the stuff that you've learned and educating your peers right?
Yeah.
And being that ally, but not because there is a Black person in the room, but because as you're hanging out with other white people and they're saying something that is racist and it's offensive, that you take that opportunity to educate them with or without a Black person in the room. That's where it starts.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yep. And then you tell them, did you know that this person that you are supporting for this election did X, Y, and Z? So it's going to take education on your part to know your candidate. But we are going to get our people to also, if you live in a community and you're sitting in a school board or PTA meetings or whatever y'all go to, and there is the one Black parent on that table complaining about the school policies against her kids' hair, you, the white person, should also be siding with her and talking to the board and going, why the hell do we even have this policy?
Right.
The Black people don't have to do that, right? You need to support that, because we Black people have been talking about this for years.
Yes.
We know what it is. And most of the things that we hear from white people is, I didn't know. So it's up to other white people to educate fellow white people. Does that make sense?
So there's some real talk right there.
Yeah, honestly, she hit all the nails on the head. I think it really just boils down to educating, the non-Blacks and encouraging the Blacks to get out and vote. I think that's truly what it comes down to. Just because I know from my perspective and in my close circle of peers, the main consensus that we get is that we feel as though our vote doesn't count. It wouldn't necessarily matter. And I think that is the mindset that we've all fallen into. And it's going to take a little while to break out of it, because, our vote does count. And I think being a minority in America or a person of color in America, we've always felt as though that our vote never counted, because we felt as though that we've never counted. The whole 3/5 compromise thing is, I think, still ingrained in a lot of people's heads. But now that it's become a more widespread, now that all of the effort that my ancestors have done, my predecessors and all of that have done, everything they've done, we have to take and move forward. So I really do think it boils down to just educating the non-Blacks or the non-people of color and encouraging the people of color to get out and do their part as well. Because it's going to take both sides, It's going to take both sides.
When you see a white woman or another white person calling the police because a Black person is jogging, that you would stop and say, hey, come on. What are you doing?
Like those people, I don't even know what to say to them. Like how stupid can you be? Like, if you're not even paying attention to the news, right? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, they watch the news and everything else and know that everything is heightened already. Like, how arrogant or maybe just stupid are you that you're gonna pull something like that? I mean, because and then 2 weeks later, the couple, when the guy was on his own place, was writing Black Lives Matter, and the
thing is, white people White people have been doing this in this country for years, for generations. A lot of the Black men that were lynched back in the day was always because of a white woman, and they know it. I don't even think it's even unconscious, because a lot of the white women that call police on Black people know what the outcome is going to be. That's why they do it. Right? They don't call on the next white person because they also know what the outcome is going to be, which is going to be nothing.
Yeah. Do you think, I know we're running a little bit over, but we're doing good. Do you think, whoops, and I didn't stop my workout watch.
Sorry, extra steps.
Yes, I know. Look at that. I got credit for this. Do you think, Dereck, that we could change this perception if we really, and this will be our last controversial topic, because Joanne and I disagree on defunding the police a little bit, but I do agree with her. Like, we need to reform some of the BS stuff in even our prison system. And when I say I'm like, I was seeing some crazy statistic the other day about, like, Black men being incarcerated for petty drug stuff, right? Like
Oh yeah.
not this is, he's dealing opiates, to the white high school girls. I'm not talking about that, right? Like that
Right.
happens. That's always going to happen because there's money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about like he was just driving and he had a,
bag of weed.
just a tiny bag of weed there. Next thing you know, the guy's thrown in jail for 5 years. When we laugh a little bit about it, but that exacerbates
the reality.
That exacerbates the problem. Like, so again, that's where like I go back to the voting stuff is, man, like I am not, I'm not a Mary J kind of guy, but like I still think it's stupid that, that some of these small offenses are just, your default thing is throwing people in jail, and then you exacerbate the problem because now, like you said, walking in the park, the guy's, minding his own business, but I don't like dogs pooping. I would have done the same thing, but she was right. Totally different outcome. If I would have said to that lady, I'm like, man, don't be that kind of woman. Like, clean that stuff up. And she probably would have been like, and then clean it up. She would have
called the police.
She wouldn't call the police. She'd call me. Wait, it's your podcast. You swore first. She'd be like, whatever, dick. Fine, I'll clean it up, you jerk. But it's just frustrating, and I can't even begin to imagine being a person of color.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're being honest, the police systems, or not the police system, excuse me, the prison systems, it's just modern day slavery. It really is. And it follows based off of the 13th Amendment, where basically, and I'm paraphrasing, is that, no one can be a slave unless you're incarcerated. Right. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I trust you. I trust you. I'm like,
13th Amendment. You're not allowed to be legally. There's no such thing as slavery in America unless you're incarcerated, or they classify it as free labor, right? Is what it is.
That's when they had black codes, right? When we did slavery was over, and they introduced black codes in the southern states, and basically because it allowed for you to enslave people if they committed a crime. If you violated the black codes, then you were given a fine, and because you couldn't pay your fine, you would then be in jail, and they can use you for free labor until you have paid for your fines. And that's how they got more black people into prison.
Oh yeah, okay.
You want to be free?
I'm getting educated because because it's like $1 an hour or something. So it would take. Oh, you guys are making my head hurt, and in a good way. In a good way.
That's just what it's been,
Yeah, and that's why there's more black people in there, because they're like, oh, you want to be free? Well, you violated something.
Yeah, but it's not even close. I mean, the numbers.
That's because they give the max.
Not even close.
Yeah, no, you got to. Well, it's systematic racism. I mean, this is what the system in place was for. It's implicitly more biased towards people of color, specifically black people, when it's sending them to jail. They typically will get longer sentences than their non-black counterparts, as well as they're more likely to get stopped by the police and not given any second chances or getting let off with a warning compared to their non-black counterparts. And fun fact, and because I understand we're running a little over time, but black men going to jail, right? It's hereditary if your father went to jail. So, for example, if my dad went to jail, I am like 3 times more likely to end up in jail. That's just how it works, And if it was my grandfather was in jail and then my dad was in jail, I think the figure jumps up to like 13 times more likely or something along those lines. So I think it just comes down to we have to get rid of the system.
Yeah. Systematic racism is real.
Yes, we have to get rid of the system. Just because
to clarify, you're not saying get rid of like courts. Like
no, I'm not saying get rid of courts at all.
But I mean, white people can be stupid, all right? Like they hear that. They hear that.
Well, maybe get rid of courts. I don't care.
Well, but I mean, we'll leave the defund the police subject alone. But I mean, when they hear that, they don't hear the context, right? Like you're not saying like everything needs to go away and needs to be anarchy and everything else. You're just basically saying like it's so bad that it needs major reform. And obviously it does. And maybe maybe we just need to start championing the money part of it, right? Because the other part, people, white people pay attention to is money. Like I look at Colorado, look at you talk about the drug stuff. I think it was something like, I mean, again, we get the paraphrase, so nobody's going to come back and yell at us about numbers, but like billions with a B, like in taxes raised.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even a smoker, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But stuff like that, like, so understanding that, wow, maybe we get more of these black men out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
We fix part of the problem with absentee dads, right? Because I mean, I think it's better now, and I'll let you guys correct me, but I mean that was a big thing in the 80s and 90s. But when all this like really started coming bad, is like so many black moms, raising these kids and everything else, and the dads aren't there because they were incarcerated. Well, maybe that dad now, I mean, it's making me think differently. Maybe that dad was incarcerated because he had that tiny bag of weed. Now it's just setting you up to fail. Right?
Yeah.
Because now he can't be a dad, because he's in jail for something stupid. Sorry, I'll be quiet for a minute.
Fine. And then when they come out of prison, they've served their time. This is true for all felons and harder for black people. They don't have any way to get back on their feet. Nobody wants to hire a felon, right? We don't have anything to help them out other than them falling back into petty crimes. Because what you gonna do? What are you gonna eat out here?
Right. You got to still take care of yourself. So now I'm going to go back to jail because I was stealing.
And so they go back and the cycle continues. So it is a lot of systems that needs to be destroyed. I feel stupid because I just learned this week that Mississippi actually did not truly get their end of slavery thing certified and whatnot till 2013. I was like, why was
what?
2013 is when slavery officially ended in Mississippi.
I'm gonna have to look
Nobody thought to just clean up the law and just go like, let's be done. But things like that, we have those silly policies in place. Whether or not it's being enforced is irrelevant, but we need to clean up those things, and we need to get people in power that can actually make effect changes. And we need to vote for more people of color. As a white person, are you comfortable with voting for a black man or a black woman for your school board director or whatever? I don't know, your local government positions.
Yeah.
But those things.
If we align, I can honestly say I am a staunch independent. If we align, like I'm embarrassed to say I voted for Snyder, but I didn't vote for Obama. Like I vote Republican and I vote Democrat. I vote for the person I think is going to get us to the best place. So
right. Yeah. But things like amplify black voices, vote for the right people, vote for people that aren't racist, vote with your money, put your money where your mouth is, right? Don't just talk the talk. Do the work, right? Do some more research. Speak up when somebody is doing something stupid. And fight in the school board, PTA meetings. I've never been to one, obviously. I don't have kids. But if I went to a PTA meeting, everybody would hear about me. I'll throw that whole thing down. But those are just some of the changes. And I do truly believe that, voting is critical. I think the police, entire police academy, and I actually covered this in my virtual happy hours, which is every Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Not to plug anything, but we've been talking about these issues for weeks now. But things like the entire police system just needs, I don't know.
It doesn't need to go away. We still need police. It needs to change.
We need police. Defunding it doesn't mean that we don't need them, right? Defunding it means defunding and making them pay for like their consequences. So, for example, the guy that shot George Floyd, he had 18 violations already prior to that, and he was still on the road. That is what we're talking about. Having them pay for consequences, having a way to say, if you do things like this twice, you are off the road till you go back through training or whatever the hell you need to go to.
Right.
But things like that is what we need
maybe
to do.
Shifting, not so much defunding. It sounds like we need to shift.
No, we need to defund them because we can't.
Well, no, I mean,
we can pay money into the thing for no reason.
Well, no, what I mean by that though is shifting money from not having militarized equipment, but shifting that money to training, and all those different things, and more community involvement. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm saying.
A lot of training, psych evaluations. I don't know. Is it going to be every week? Because I've seen so many stories where they're like, oh, she was just like the female police that walked into another guy's apartment, shot him, killed him, and then claimed that she was just too tired from work. And I'm like, I've been tired from work. I've never once walked into the wrong apartment. Why is it that police can make so much mistakes and we make excuses for them, yet pilots fly planes every single,
and if you have one day. Too many drinks, then that guy's fired. Yeah, that's
true. But every other job has things in place. We have roads, we have a lot of accidents, but every time we're fixing the roads, we're putting stop signs on, we're putting traffic lights, we're doing all those different things, but we don't do them for the police. We just let it go. That's cool. It's the police. It's a hard job. Do you know their life was in danger? Like, seriously? Because if they are that scared about being on the road, they are no different than I am. I'm so scared of being on the road. That's why I did not become a police officer. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. We don't hold them accountable. And I think that's what we're saying, is that we need to start holding them accountable.
Well,
why did we have to do protests, burn down cities before they were even fired from their jobs? Why was that not a standard practice, that you killed somebody that was unarmed, and that was just not standard practice, to fire you and immediately arrest you? And we had to just wait and burn down countless cities before anything was done. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, that's a good way to.
Because you let me
we're gonna
go,
end it on. We're gonna end it on a positive note. So we're gonna leave it to you.
Yeah, white people are cool. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I don't mean by that. I mean, what are you most hopeful for, Dereck?
I'm most hopeful for the growth that will come of this. I do believe that change will happen, and I think especially these past few weeks have proven that change is going to happen. Mm-hmm. I'm very happy and I'm hopeful to be able to have no more difficult conversations, if that makes sense, and because I don't like to have these conversations. Excuse me, let me rephrase. I don't mind having these conversations, but my main point behind these conversations is always to educate, never to create white guilt, for example. Like I don't want to make you feel bad for being white or feel bad for things that people of your race or your color have done before you. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that these difficult conversations will basically begin to stop, and there will just be a thing of the past. So I'm very hopeful for that.
I think that's awesome. You almost made me a little emotional on that one.
I am hopeful that more people are open to having these conversations, right? People didn't always want to have these conversations. And I do think that there will be change. I unfortunately also see that a lot of companies are jumping on the bandwagon because it's good for business. Companies you haven't heard of in years can now come to like, we support, okay, cool, whatever. But that's cool. I'm not worried about it. But I am happy and I am hopeful that we've come to a point in this country where everybody can take a step back and go, let's talk. Like, I have probably talked to more people this last few weeks than I have in the entire last 5 years, even though I've been talking about the same topics, right? Mm-hmm. People just being like, hey, what can we do? And how can we help? And those different things. And I am hopeful that this change, there's something good will come out of it, whether it's for personal gain. I don't know if you know, but Black people do have a purchasing power of over $1 trillion, and we actually plan to.
Did I not say vote with your wallet? I said vote with your wallet also.
And we are planning to use it, and this is just the beginning. And a lot of companies is starting to see that.
I do think that this younger generation, you guys have been exposed to ways and technology. Like, we've always had video games. We've always had, we helped with, promoting the internet and everything else. But, our vision is kind of limited, right? Like, as we move into different phases of our life, I'm looking at different things that I want out of life. I'm excited that I think that the foundation with technology and just having these kinds of conversations can open it up, that I really look forward to seeing what your guys' generation does. Because I mean, and I hope it doesn't make it polarized. I don't want it to become polarizing, like, you know, you have an AOC, right? She's caught like as a polarizing
AOC,
figure. I don't want, see, I don't want our generation just see someone like that and just discount it like, oh my God, she's a crackpot and everything else. I want people to see it as like, okay, here's somebody that's at least making a stand. Do I think she's going a little extreme? Yep. But at least she's doing something about it, right? And you have other people in your generation that are like trying to make a difference. And you know what? That's sure as hell better than just sitting on the sidelines doing nothing. So
Yeah.
I'm just hopeful that I think you guys have the drive and the willpower to make this change permanent.